Welcome back to the Forensic Detailing channel. Today we're going to be doing our 3-stage polish of the BMW M3.
Gone away when it's unloaded. Is that alright? Yeah. If you don't shoot it, how am I supposed to hold it? Is that alright? Yeah. I'll give my gun away when it's unloaded. Is that alright? Is that alright with you? Is that alright? Yeah.
Give my gun away.
Is that alright?
You don't shoot it, how
Is that alright?
Give my gun away.
Is that alright? Is that alright? Is that alright with you? No.
Okay, so the first thing when you're doing paint correction on the car and you've done your kind of wash on the car, get it all clean, is you need to really inspect the kind of paintwork on the car, okay, to see what you're dealing with. So this particular car, I'll walk you around it and show you some of the problems we've got to face. And one of the main problems is we've got some fresh clear coat that's only been about 2 weeks old. So I've had the front bumper done, one of the wings resprayed, and the rear bumper done, okay, just to tidy the car up. The bonnet looks like it's had paint sometime in the past to me, and the other wing looks like it's been resprayed to me. The roof, the doors, the rear quarters, like they're, and the tailgate, the boot, look like they're on the original paintwork. Okay, so I'm going to find a mixture of fresh paint, which will be softer than normal paint, nice and soft and nice and workable, and that just needs polishing. Okay, it doesn't need compounding, it just needs tidying up, finishing. Then the bonnet on the the paint on the front bonnet, and I don't know what that's going to be like. I suspect it's going to be reasonably soft and it will correct up nicely. Then the OEM older kind of BMW paint that needs correction and polishing, and then the finishing polishing, you know, the jeweling stage as they call it. So we've got different methods we're going to be using for different parts of the car. So probably, as always though, you'd get the compounding done first and then move on to the polishing, and then the final kind of finishing polish or jeweling polish, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on. As always, before you attempt to polish a car, you need to clean it very thoroughly, which is one of the most important things. You really want to get into all the areas where you're going to be going near to make sure all the grit and dirt are out of it, and you need to decontaminate the paintwork, because it's no point trying to hit parts of the panels that need polishing if they're covered in fallout or tar and sap. Okay, you're just going to be, the abrasive is going to be working on those bits of fallout. You want clean panels, okay, contaminant free. So that's been done. There wasn't a lot of contaminant on the car actually. The main places where the contaminant was behind the front wheels. They're quite aggressive kind of wheel arches, big old tyres, big brakes, so you're going to get kind of a lot of that brake dust on the sides. There was a bit there, and as always a little bit on the rear tailgate. The areas that have had fresh paint, you know, they're not going to have any contaminant on those, so I didn't bother claying those. I did check them just to make sure, but it's literally, it hasn't done anything since it's come back from the body shop, so that's fine. What else? We will also be taping up, okay, because we're going to be using a rotary to do the correction. So I want to talk a little bit now about the kit we're going to be using. Okay guys, so we're going to be using most of the machines I've got here. So the first thing, for any of the paint correction, we're going to be going with the rotary. And so this is the rotary that I use, and I don't use it very often, but I thought it'd be good to do the video on using the rotary. And to be honest, when there's a lot of correction to do, you can you always walk the line when you use the rotary, and you can cross. If you cross the line, you can get to the stage where you're correcting clear coat too quickly. When you correct clear coat too quickly, you can burn the clear coat, put those buffer trowels in them, which is not so much of a problem. But the main thing is you can shave clear coat too quickly to the point where you can cut through it all the way. So you just need to keep your speeds down when you're working with these. The biggest thing that goes on with them is buffer trowels, and you know, paint shops up and down the country are flattening out their work when they've done it, and they're putting buffer trowels in them because they don't care, or they can't see the buffer trowels most of the time, so they don't even realise you're doing it. The buffer trowels, you really need strong, pure sunlight to see them. Even sometimes you can't see them with the halogens. Those are the main problems about using the rotary. But if you stick to certain speeds, and you've all got to see how the paint's responding to the correction first. If you stick to those certain speeds, it's not much different to using these and using your dual action polishers or your Flex 3401. Okay, so I use this in quite a cautious way. I don't very often go above 1,000. I don't find I need to. When I get close to 1,000, I become aware that I'm correcting quite rapidly, and it's the point where you start noticing you're putting heat into the panels. That's always a warning sign for me, okay? That you use the heat as a barometer kind of to how much friction is going on, okay? The heat is not going to help you. It's not like, you know, you don't need the heat to kind of help you cut through the clear coat. It doesn't. It's just the fact that you're using abrasives, and abrasives shave clear coat by rubbing them with friction, you know, and kind of gently shaving them, I guess. But the heat is not going to do you any favours. But use it as a barometer, and if you start feeling heat, you know that you are putting your work in that product probably right at the limit. You know, I look at as soon as I start to feel it warming up, that's a sign for me to not go any faster. Okay, you know, in terms of rotational speeds. So just be aware of heat. Use it as an indicator. When you get tons of it, if your panel's really warm, you're going to be correcting very quickly, and you are more than likely going to be putting buffer trowels in if you're using aggressive compounds. So we're going to be using the DeWalt rotary, the 849X, which is a beast of a rotary. Okay, it's a really fantastic tool. The only downside to it is it's bloody heavy, and it is heavy. Okay, okay, you can lift it. It's not like a weight, but it's the cumulative effect of holding this for a long amount of time that will tire you out, and it will make you'll sleep well when you've been correcting all day using this. Okay, so this is the DeWalt 849. Okay guys, so we talked about the machine we're going to use, the DeWalt 849X. So I just want to talk about the pads we're going to use on the rotary to perform paint correction, so the cutting pads, okay? So I wanted to try and use this inter-detailing cutting pad more that I spoke about in another video. The reason I'm using these is because they're good quality for low price, £5 for a 6-inch pad. Okay, I want to test these and keep working them and see how long I get out of them and see how they perform. You know, you've got to just keep using products more and more. So I'm interested to see how this works. And I've just bought this ShineMate flexible 150mm backing plate to go with this pad. So it's a perfect fit. And you've got a little bit of protection there from the cone, you know, the cone shape from not hitting the roughness of that backing plate. So it's a good system. I'm optimistic this is going to be cool. Just generally, when you're using larger pads on the rotary, you're going to get pushed and pulled around more. So it's more important when you're using a larger pad to keep your machine level, keep your speeds lower, and just keep that machine level, and don't let the thing push and pull you around. You know, you don't hold it tight, you just hold it loose, but you do not let it pull you around. You get it balanced and then just work the machine, okay? Like I say, when you first do it, if you go too fast, that machine will feel all weird and awkward and start yanking you all over the place. So the first time you use a rotary, you know, keep the speeds down and use smaller pads. So I'm going to have a play around with that 6-inch pad on that combo, which I hadn't used before, apart from the one time I had a play around with it to kind of test the pad. So I want to work that pad hard and see if I can spot any flaws with it. We can also use the HexLogic system on the rotor, which is fine. They're okay. You know, these pads are not quite as durable as some of the other ones, the Lake Country ones that I'll talk about in a second. But they're still a good size. You'll get pulled and pushed around less on this. So it's a 5.5-inch it's a 5.5-inch HexLogic yellow cutting pad, and I'll also use their orange one. Okay, there's not much difference between the two, even though this is like heavy cutting pad and the other one's medium. They're very similar. Okay, it's not going to make too much difference. I will probably just use the orange ones first. I don't know why I've got this one on here. It's nice and new. So 5.5-inch HexLogic cutting pad on a Menzerner 125 millimeter. Come on, brain. It's late in the day. Backing plate, flexible backing plate. We have a third option, and this is a really good option if you're starting out, and I love these pads. Okay, I use them on the Flex, the Lake Country hybrid power pads. You know, 2 cutting pads, heavy cutting pad, lighter cutting pad. Again, they both cut virtually the same. It's hard to tell the difference. So these pads, 5-inch pads, 4-inch backing plate. So 4-inch backing plate is a 95mm backing plate. So if I'm having any problems with any of those, I've got a third set to try out. I like using these because they're so easy. There's virtually no push or pull with these, and they're really durable pads that last. Probably my favourite out of all of them. The only reason why I might not use them too much is I've only got a very budget backing plate, which is a bit rigid and not very well centred. So there's a little bit of a play on it, you know. So that is all the equipment we are going to be using for the compounding phase of this with the rotary. Our aim with that compounding is to use aggressive products to shave clear coat in a relatively quick manner, which is a dangerous thing to do. But you know, I've done videos doing it with the DA in a very slow, safe way. You know, I've done them with the Flex, which is still relatively slow compared to correcting with a rotary, or the capability you have with a rotary. Depends how close you want to walk to the danger line with the rotary. And the thing is, you can go so fast beyond the danger line with the rotary, you can cut through your clear coat in seconds. Especially with that thing, I think it ramps up to 3,500 RPM. God knows why, but for other things, I guess. But the point is, the rotary has all sorts of horror stories with it. It's safe if you just follow a couple of basic rules to use it properly, and we'll talk about those a little bit later on. So I want to talk about how we're going to be doing the finishing down, the polishing stage, the second phase of our work here. Okay guys, and the last thing I need to talk about with the compounding phase is what product we're going to be using. So we're going to be using our old friend that I'm always banging on about, Scholl S3 Gold XXL. Must be XXL, the limited edition one. It's got more lubrication, but I'm not sure if it's a different abrasive technology, but I believe it's definitely got more lubrication in it. It's always the one that I've always bought, okay? I'm not sure if S3 Gold, because I've never used normal S3 Gold, is non-diminishing, but anyway, S3 Gold XXL, fantastic product. Again, because it's heavy cut. It breaks down, okay? So you could, some people I know use this to, you know, quickly on their car, and they're happy with the finish it provides. It's not a one-step compound. This is a heavy cut compound that breaks down so that you can then finish, and the gap between what an aggressive compound will leave and what this will leave is quite big. So it makes refining the product easier because it breaks down, but it's still a heavy cut product, okay? The fact that it breaks down as well means that the cut will tail off a little bit, which makes it a bit safer as well when using it on the Rotary, and a bit less prone to putting buffer trails in your paint. But you can still do it, okay? It will still leave buffer trails. If you go in, you can still heat your paintwork up, you can still cut through your clear coat, you can still do some bad stuff if you go in reckless. But this, one of the best abrasives I've ever used, one of the best cutting compounds I've ever used, because of the way it's lubricated and because of the way it breaks down. Just the gloss, okay? And we are going to be using the 3401 to do that. And today we have our special helper, Junior compounder. Are you going to help us do the paint correction?
Yeah.
What's best to use, a Rotary or a DA?
Rotary.
Okay. Why? Why? Oh, you're getting heavy.
I've always called Daddy.
I know you have. No, they're not toys. They're not toys. They're not toys.
Can you give me one?
You can't have those. You can have one of these. Hold on. You can have that one. What are you doing? Don't get it dirty. Go, go, go. Go get Mummy. Give me that.
No, I want to.
Okay guys, so next up we're going to be talking about the polishing or the finishing phase. So once we've gone in and cut as much of that damage out as we can to get a good level of correction, all that swirl damage, we then go back over the car, clear coat, and we refine that cut finish to a nice glossy polished finish. We're going to use, you know, you could use the Rotary for that, but we're going to use the 3401. It's a great tool for finishing down on. Fantastic tool. You could use it to correct, but we've chosen to use the Rotary for this, to do the kind of demo of using the Rotary. So the Flex 3401. It's a lot of a move towards these kind of Chinese supplied pre-spinning DAs with the big throws, either the 15mm throw or the 21 throw. And I've never used these. You know, the DAS Pro Plus, I suppose. You know, there's all these tools out there that are cheap. I've never used those Chinese offerings, because the Flex 3401 just gives me everything I need. It's a beast, you know, but it's a safe beast. It's a caged beast, and you can't uncage it. And even if you use it recklessly, it will still be safe. Okay, so this Flex 3401 for me is still a fantastic product to do correction and finishing on. In fact, if you had to pick one tool, that's never a good thing to say, because the fact that it's a DA does create certain problems when working in tight spaces and limitations. You can't use extension bars and that, so there is no one tool. But you know, it's a fantastic bit of kit, the 3401. You know, it really is. And quite simply, I always use it with that adapter system and these Lake Country 5-inch pads with the 4-inch backing plates. That's all I use. So I'll be using polishing pads this time with it. They go straight onto the machine, and that system works well with no pushing, no pulling, because they're nice small pads. And we will be using Shoal S40 anti-swirl compound. So this is a finishing compound, a very fine, high finishing compound. So you could, 99 times out of 100, I will just, if I'm doing a 2-stage, it will just be that S3 gold to correct, S40 to finish down, okay? The jeweling stage, or the ultra fine polishing, you could use this to do the jeweling if you wanted to. I'm going to be using probably another product which is called SF4500, or possibly we might even use M205 to do the jeweling. We will see. We will have a little play, and we'll talk about the jeweling in a second. Okay, and finally we're going to be doing it's kind of known as the jeweling stage. You know, the jeweling, the third stage, where you're doing an ultra fine polish. Okay, with a slightly different technique, and we'll talk a little bit more about that technique. You could choose to use any of these machines, and the jeweling is something that doesn't get talked about too much. Okay, because it's getting to the stage where, time-wise, to do this third stage jeweling, not a lot of people are doing it. Okay, some of the high-end detailers are charging for it, but it's hard to spot the difference between a car that's been well polished and a car that's been well polished and jeweled. Okay, but the aim is to really go, the extra stage of polishing is to really go bananas on the polishing stage of the car, because that's what really brings up the finish. So you should always spend a lot of time. Paint correction and compounding is about getting the damage out. Polish is about getting that paintwork as refined as possible to give you real nice depth and shine. Okay, and that extra polishing stage can make a hell of a difference. Now, I'm just going to show you the method of how I do it. Okay, and there might be lots of pros, and there will be lots of pros and lots of people that have jeweled a lot more cars than me. Okay, I've only done this a few times, but it's worth doing if it's something that, you know, the car's important to you. Now, the way I do it is I'm going to be using the Rotary, and I'll be operating the Rotary, okay, and I'll be operating the Rotary on its slowest speed, about 600, maybe 700, very slow speeds. And I'll be using a finishing pad with virtually no cut or minimal cut. Some people will tell you to just use a polishing pad, you don't have to use particularly soft pads. I'm going to do it with a finishing pad, okay? So that's the first thing, finishing pad on there, very slow speeds and no pressure. I don't want to be pushing the pad down on the paintwork, so you actually support the weight of the machine a little bit and don't let the pad compress. Just lift off a bit and just work very nice and slow. As always, I think that's the important thing. That's the thing, but even less pressure. So take some of the weight of the machine and just work that over your clear coat and let the product get worked. Okay, so that's the technique. We'll use the interdetailing jeweling pad, finishing pad. Sorry, if I have any problems, I'll switch over to a 5.5 hex logic finishing pad, or the Lake County finishing pad. Lake Country. I always say Lake County. We'll jewel possibly with either of these as well, either the polishing pad or the finishing pad. Product wise, okay, here's the thing, product wise, we could, now I don't actually know, they don't seem to tell you the size of the abrasive, okay, so I've always tended to jewel with this product here, which is now called Menzerner SF3800. It used to be called SF4500, but they changed the name very recently. I've no idea why. But so SF4500, this is known as. To all intensive purposes, it behaves exactly the same as their finishing polish, the SF4000. Very much like the S40. It's lubricated the same way, okay? It's not just a water-based one, it's got all these kind of oils and stuff, and it just keeps going. So it's a product that you can work, and you can just, you can just overwork it or underwork it and you won't know the difference. Now, some people will recommend you do jeweling with the Meguiar's 205 because it allows you to load it up with more water. That water-based lubricant can be bulked out, so you can have lots of water there and use kind of like a flushing method to kind of, it's some sort of debris control thing. I've never had a problem, or I've never seen scratches being caused by the debris that you're shaving off of the clear coat, and I don't know anything about that, but my personal view is that it might be a problem on some clear coats, some non-original clear coats that some body shops are using that are ridiculously soft, okay? And I've seen those clear coats, but that, you know, most clear coat that's put on, aftermarket clear coat if you like, is not as hard as the original manufacturer clear coat, especially the German stuff. But I've not seen any of it prone to being scratched by the debris, and I've never needed to use any sort of flushing system to flush away the debris from the clear coat. And in fact, I don't really understand the concept, because you've got to work the product, and I don't know how the water can flush that away if you make a sort of looser mix. So I'm not too sure about that whole flushing thing. All I do when I dual is I lay this down and I put the film of it out over quite a small area, and I work it with minimal pressure and work it slowly at very low speeds on the rotary. I prefer personally, okay? And the pad choice I'm not too fussed about, but it would be a finishing pad or a polishing pad, a fine polishing pad. That's what I prefer. In terms of removing the product, yeah, it's a really good tip to use, because you don't want to be blasting IPA onto it now at this final stage. So what I do is have a little bit of lukewarm water with a little bit of IPA in it, and I use the Boa 350 soaked in that warm water, and that way I can just gently take that final product off of the car. Gently but reasonably quickly, okay? It's just a little bit less brutal than using dry cloths and hitting it with the IPA solution, okay? So, nothing. It sounds like a lot of work, but it's not. It's just a slight different method, and that's just a slow, light method, and carefully remove the product that's left behind with those damp cloths. So that's it with the dualing. So what we're going to do now, just the other bits and pieces of kit. We've got the dual 400 watt halogens as always. We got a box of my favourite cloths, the Ragmaster Eagle Edgeless. There's some Savers Choice Korean 80/20s in that box as well, because they are so good. And there's some other high quality ones in there, but it's a box of good buffing cloths, okay? Tons of them. You're gonna need them. And our IPA, I think it's mixed up somewhere between 70 to 80% water to 20 to 30% pure 99% proof IPA. So it's a reasonably light mix. Oh. One other thing, we will be using our Flex PE 84 to be doing polishing on the front bumper and the hard to hit areas, okay? You know, I did a review of this particular tool, so when you're doing full machine polish on a car like this and you want to hit everything, a compact rotary is a handy tool to have with all the extension bars and the smaller pads. So we will be using the PE84 with the, whatever that is, 3-inch extension bar, 2-inch backing plates, and cheap Chinese pads, okay? There's the small pad market, the best ones I thought for me were those flex pads that came with the review. They were so good, but the reality is, for the amount of times I'm using them, that they're around £10 each. So really, for a small pad, that puts it into the professional category rather than the hobbyist detailer. So I am going cheap. These cost like pennies each. They're cheap Chinese 2-inch pads. They do work, and the sky's the limit with them. You can do heavy correction with them if you work them hard. The difference is they're just not as good quality. You know, you haven't got any shape on them, so you've got less protection from hitting the pads. You have to just be a little bit careful with them. you know, use common sense, but they will deliver results. You know, it is what it is, cheap and cheerful. So the PE H/4 for the hard to hit areas, small intricate areas. Okay, so the car has been cleaned and prepped and decontaminated to hell and back, and I'm going to bring the car in now and we're going to start work on it. Oh, and one other thing before we do, you need to get yourself a cheap eBay trolley, 25 quid, cheap eBay stool for a tenner, with adjustment height and wheels on it, because if you're doing this sort of work, you're gonna need to be sitting down, and you're gonna need to be putting all your tools on a trolley, as I talked about. One of the most important bits of kit. Do not be the guy who's doing machine polishing with his machine polisher sitting on a gravel driveway with all his gear sitting in some plastic box or on a towel on the gravel driveway. Do not work like that. Get a trolley and get a stool and work properly. Okay, one other quick thing. Tape. Okay, the more of this work that I do, the more of this machine polishing I do, and I've been doing it for a fair few years now, the less tape I end up using. Okay, when I started, I used to cover the car in tape everywhere, you know, because I just thought that's what you were supposed to do. Now, if I'm not using the Rotary, I will not use any tape, more or less. Sometimes there's some exceptions to that, but more or less, I tend to use it more for protection now, for if I'm going in areas where I know there's a risk that, you know, I'm going along a line where I could be hitting a panel with the plate. Okay, so I tend to use it more for a little bit of protection or covering something that I don't want to hit. With the Rotary, you have to be a little bit, especially when you're using the Rotary at high speeds, you have to be aware of edges, okay, and pressure. Because wherever there's like an edge, so on this particular M3, we've got like a lot of contours on the bonnet. When you're going over a contour at high speed, the amount of pressure, say this tape is the Rotary, the head of the Rotary spinning, and this is the bit you're polishing. The amount of pressure on that edge is so much higher than when you're polishing on a flat piece. So you're actually working that compound and that product at quite high pressures, and that can cause you to go through the clear coat on the edges. There's also less clear coat on those edges from the way the clear coat falls when it's being sprayed. So you have to be quite careful when you're polishing over edges. So a lot of people will kind of, you know, you can tape them up, you know, when you're operating at high speeds. However, if you're operating at low speeds with the Rotary, it is less of a problem, okay? I don't need to worry so much about using tape for protection from the backing plates, because of the systems that I'm using have got a little bit of, you know, give there. So I'll probably be, you know, I won't be pre-taping up the car and covering it in blue tape. You know, what I'll probably be doing is just working on it. And there's a couple of bits that I will tape up actually on the bonnet. The front, it's got like a grill thing on the front. I'll tape up around there, because it will stop me cramming polish, and I'm going to be going right up to it. So that's one thing. If I encounter any other bits of the car that need taping when I'm doing it, I'll probably slap some tape on before I polish them. But my plan is to use as little of this stuff as I can generally, and just work nice and slow and carefully. That's not a normal thing as well. I think a lot of professionals will tell you if you're using a Rotary, tape up. But again, this is just me.